friend from Patchogue, and our friend from West Iceland.
Yes,
Yes,
and also Mr. Picarelli.
yes. Mr. Picarello is standing right behind me from Oakdale?
Holbrook,
Holbrook?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
north of Sunrise.
North of Sunrise. Oof. Okay, you know what they say about people north or north of Montauk even. Anyway, I have a smile on my face, but I really don't. Let me start this press conference by saying that we're here to announce a challenge to the Eastern District Federal Court on a recent decision that was a case that was initiated in 2016. This case held that taxpayers are liable for honoring Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, who asked us to detain prisoners that were here unlawfully in the United States. We honored the request of ICE and Homeland Security to detain these prisoners so they could be processed and, I assume, deported by ICE. Incredibly, we are being sued for detaining them on the instructions of the federal government. The federal government has asserted qualified immunity in this case, leaving the county to fend for itself. The judgment could be as high as $60 million in this case. This decision is forcing the taxpayers of Suffolk County to pay millions of dollars for illegal residents who were arrested and charged with crimes and then detained after their sentence at the request of Homeland Security and ICE. We are now being sued for detaining them at the request of the federal government. We will fight this. I strongly believe that anyone that's in this country illegally, that's committed a crime or violated one of our laws, should not be here. And we will continue to work with ICE and Homeland Security on this issue. But for the courts to hold against the county because we detained these people at the request of the federal government, and now to hold us liable because we cooperated with the federal government, is nothing short of ridiculous. We will fight this all the way. We are appealing this decision. This is a decision that we do not agree with. We have a lot of ways to spend $60 million, but it's not paying back illegal immigrants, many of whom were held here for criminal charges or violation of our law at the request of ICE. You know, every day in this job, you see things that make you shake your head. This is one of those things that make me shake my head. I'm going to ask our sheriff to speak. He was not sheriff at the time in 2016, but he can speak to this issue. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, County Executive Romaine, for having me here today and for taking action to challenge this lawsuit. As Suffolk County Sheriff, my main goal is to protect public safety while ensuring accountability and fairness in all our enforcement policies. We currently have nearly 1,000 inmates in our facilities, and I take their care and custody very seriously. This includes the cooperation with our partner agencies, including the federal authorities. When I assumed office in 2018, we were obligated to honor ICE detainers, warrants to hold individuals already in our custody for an additional 48 hours at the request of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. When New York State determined that we could no longer honor ICE detainers later that year, we immediately complied, ceasing the practice following the court's decisions. To now penalize the county using taxpayer dollars for following the law as it was interpreted at this time is unjustifiable. This $60 million is better spent on initiatives that directly enhance public safety, not on litigating a case that lacks any merit. We were and continue to follow the law, and it is irresponsible to leave taxpayers to bear the consequences. This is about fairness, accountability, and protecting the resources that our residents depend on. The Sheriff's Office remains committed to following the law, upholding public trust, and ensuring fiscal responsibility. Together with our county executive and our law enforcement partners, we will continue to advocate for the residents of Suffolk County and work toward a resolution that prioritizes fairness, safety, and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. We've just been joined by Legislator Kennedy, and I think I've seen Legislator Stark come in. But the legislature is behind us. The sheriff is behind us. Our case is going to be carried by our county attorney. We are definitely appealing this decision. We regret that the previous administration did not object vigorously as we are. We think if we're asked by the federal government, and this is what the story was, we were asked by the federal government, by ICE, by Homeland Security, to detain people up to 48 hours who had committed crimes so they could pick them up and handle them, I assume, for deportation, for whatever else. And we did what we were asked by the federal authorities. And now we're being sued with the writ of habeas corpus, et cetera. And that's $60 million that this suit, that this judgment could cost this county by the Eastern District Federal Court. This is ridiculous. We are definitely going to appeal this. And to speak about this, the guy that's going to carry our water, and the lady, is from our county attorney's office, Chris Clayton. Could you speak a little bit about the legal aspect of this case?
Certainly. So I think the county attorney and the sheriff have touched on the really salient points of the lawsuit. It's an 8-year-old case that has a Byzantine thread of litigation associated with it, so it would take more time than we have today to talk about it. But the undisputed facts in this case are that the individuals who are subject to these detainers were in this country unlawfully, and ICE and Homeland Security issued the detainers and warrants because of that illegal status. Number two, these individuals were taken into the custody of local law enforcement and our jail because they had violated the law. And again, you have potentially a class of 650 plaintiffs, so there may be varying facts as to how they came to be in the custody of the jail, but it's not asserted in any fashion that law enforcement engaged in inappropriate conduct in taking them into custody. ICE and Homeland Security had the legal authority to issue these detainers and these warrants in furtherance of enforcing the Immigration and Nationality Act, and as the county executive alluded to, we presume seeking removal, and in some cases we become aware that removal was in fact granted in some of the plaintiffs that are named in the case. It's notable, and I think ultimately ironic, that the federal authorities have been dismissed from this case, we believe, in recognition of the fact that they had statutory and other immunity, as alluded to by the county executive in his comments. We believe that the court erroneously failed to recognize that the INA provides immunity to the county as well. We honored lawfully issued, undisputedly lawfully issued detainers and warrants under the color of federal authority. And we think that that should provide us with the appropriate immunity for that behavior. We think that the court failed to recognize some of the arguments that we've already made, and without belaboring the point, we will continue to challenge this by any means necessary, as the county executive has alluded to. So, thank you.
Thank you. And before we take questions, I would only say I deeply regret the fact that the taxpayers of Suffolk County have to defend this case. We were acting under federal authority at federal request to do this, to detain these individuals. They were lawfully detained. For us to now bear the responsibility for what we were asked to do by Homeland Security and ICE is nothing short of ludicrous. And now the taxpayers are on the hook. This we will fight, and we will defend the taxpayers of Suffolk County and our right to work with federal officials at their request to remove people who are acting illegally and in this country illegally. Does any of the legislators wish to comment? No.
It's just asinine.
I know, it's,
You can quote me about asinine.
Anybody have questions?
yes. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Alexander, if, let's say you appeal it and it doesn't fall in favor, where would the money come from to have to pay that?
These individuals were all people that were here, from what I understand, this case was brought in 2016, were here illegally, had entered the country illegally, and in some cases had committed crimes or violated some law, local law. They were in our jails, and ICE asked us to detain these individuals so they could pick them up. They were detained on average between 24 and 48 hours. They filed a writ of habeas corpus. There was a lawsuit brought in 2016. It's been working its way through the courts. There's just a judgment out against the county. The feds, the federal government, ICE, and Homeland Security that initiated these requests were given qualified immunity, which we felt, since we were acting under the guidance of the federal government and at their request, that that should have been extended to the county. It was not. You look around when you're involved in litigation, who has the deep pockets? Oh, I guess we can't go after the federal government, let's go after the county. So that's what this has been about, and I'll just, yes,
Would you like to answer the question?
yes.
If the judgment was rendered against, we would have to bond it.
We would have to either bond it or take it out of our operating budget, one or the other. So this is coming out of taxpayers' pockets, because we followed the guidance of our federal government at the request of our federal government to detain people who were in this country illegally, some of whom had broken our laws and were detained in our jails.
Anybody else?
I know you mentioned habeas corpus. What is their defense and why are they suing the county?
I'm going to ask our county attorney, who's more schooled in the law than I could ever be.
Spell your last name for me, please.
Sure, Clayton. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a series of events that began in 2016, and it's now 2024. So you've had a lot of litigation in both state and federal courts. The writ of habeas corpus to which the county executive referenced was a case not involving one of the named plaintiffs here, but a case in which the Appellate Division Second Department determined that the state didn't have the authority, from their perspective, to honor these warrants. And as the sheriff indicated, when we got that decision from the courts, that stopped at that point. However, we still argue that we were operating under color of law during the time that we were doing it, and are entitled to the immunity that the law provides. And certainly, we would implore the federal government, to answer the question of the other reporter who asked it, may contribute to an ultimate decision if we're unsuccessful in challenging it. We hope to be, and we believe we have very good and valid bases to challenge this on many fronts. Respectfully, very respectfully, believe that the judge got it wrong, and we'll take our remedies as we can. But certainly, we would implore the federal government to step up if such a judgment ever was come to fruition.
And most, if not all, have been arrested while in the country illegally.
In every single one of these cases, the ICE detainers were issued for people with cause and with affidavits and legal process that indicated that these people were in the country illegally, and that ICE and Homeland Security were processing them through whatever due process the federal government would provide to them under the INA to either remove them, detain them, and so forth. So yes, is the answer to that question.
Anybody else?
Where is the $60 million figure coming from?
That's coming from a claim that's made in the papers by the plaintiffs. So that's the claimed damages. Remember, they've issued judgment in favor of them. You still have to litigate the liability. We'd have the ability, even if judgment is upheld against us, to litigate the liability part of it as well. But that number is coming from a claim from the plaintiffs.
And the attorney fees.
And associated with that, exactly, the county executive and I have talked about this. It's not just this, noble distribution to allegedly violated individuals. There's a lot of attorney's fees for lawyers associated with that too, because that's what the federal law provides.
So you said you were following ICE
The county, the way it works is the 10th Amendment doesn't allow the federal government to tell you directly that you must, but it lets you know that you may, asks you to, and provides you defense and indemnification, defense is the wrong word, but indemnification and in the form of immunity for abiding by those. And we argue that the immunity that's provided in the statute should attach to us, yeah.
So even though the appellate court already ruled that it was unlawful in
Well,
2018?
Correct. We think that there is not necessarily collateral estoppel on the federal claims that we're processing. Remember, there's the state court on one hand, and then there's the federal claims to immunity. And we have a lot, again, we could spend hours talking about the 8 years of litigation surrounding it. But yeah, our argument is that that state determination on the writ of habeas corpus is not dispositive of our right to claim immunity in federal court.
And just to be clear, an appeal hasn't yet been filed, but will be?
So we are considering all options. Appeal is on the table. There are remedies, including appealing, and appeal is the wrong word, petitioning to the court to reconsider. There's a lot of trial court level work to be done, and there's also the right to appeal if ultimately that occurs. And we're committed to doing whatever is necessary to ensure that our taxpayers are protected.
I just will say one thing, I just want to add one thing. If we pursue all of our remedies and we fail, we are definitely appealing this case. Just to make that absolutely crystal clear.
Would the county engage in settlement negotiations with plaintiffs?
It's probably too early to comment on that. And certainly our legal strategy is not something we want to communicate in a press conference either, yeah.
Chris, you mentioned 650, was that the number of people that are on part of this? Is that
Claimed number of class action plaintiffs,
in just Suffolk County or across the country?
Suffolk County. There are other cases around the country as well.
All right, guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Hopefully I didn't say too much.